want to talk about amplifiers, and specifically I want to talk about Outlaw amplifiers. The fine folks at Outlaw reached out to me and asked if I'd be interested in checking out one of their amplifiers, and I said I'd be honored to. I've heard really good things about Outlaw, them providing some solid specs for the money, and something I would consider to be like a step up from like your basics Emotiva amplifier. And don't get me wrong, I love Emotiva. I have my theater is being powered by Emotiva amps. I have all 17 channels are powered through Emotiva, and I love it. Not everybody has XPA money. Sometimes you just want to get a bit of an upgrade to offload some of your channels from your AV receiver onto a more powerful amp. It's the Model 7000X. It's 7 channels, 130 watts at 8 ohms, all channels driven. Most AV receivers, they advertise the 2 channels driven number. So if they say that an amplifier outputs 120 watts, it's typically at 2 channels. And when you're driving all the channels that the receiver can support, it's significantly less amount of power. If your receiver says it's 120 watts for 2 channels driven, and it powers 7 channels, if you're driving all 7 channels, maybe you're getting 50 if you're lucky. This amplifier will give you the whole 130 watts, all channels driven at 8 ohms. And it also, if you have 4 ohm speakers, it's 4 ohm stable, and it'll give you 200 watts per channel at 4 ohms, which I think is fantastic. So I'm going to give you a couple of reasons why you would consider getting one of these amps. Number one, you want to raise your channel count. Let's say you have a mid-range receiver. I have an Onkyo RZ830, which is a 9-channel receiver, but can process up to 11 channels. So you could theoretically use one of these amps to power maybe your front stage, your center channel speaker, maybe your surrounds. You could theoretically use one of these amplifiers to power 7 out of your 11 channels, right? If you do want to go to a 7.2.4 setup. Another good reason is to have more dynamics. Most receivers are great at up to like moderate volumes. When you start cranking it up, you might start experiencing clipping and distortion if you start hitting the upper ends of what your receiver can handle. It'll allow your speakers to pull all the power that they need to satisfy whatever the movie soundtrack is asking it to do. If it's asking for an extremely loud, sound effect for a split second, it can deliver the power without clipping, without causing any distortion and potentially fatigue. Well, today's another great day in the life of a home theater enthusiast. Let's go into the theater today and check out something new. So, the good folks at Outlaw just reached out and said that they asked if I wanted to check out one of their amplifiers, and I said, of course I do. And but yeah. So let's go ahead and open it and see what's in the box, and then we'll talk about where I'm going to set this thing up. The first thing I want to point out about this thing is I didn't even check the weight of this thing, but this thing weighs about 60 pounds, which is heavier than my Emotiva amplifiers that I bought for this theater. So if you go alone, if you just consider the sheer weight of the thing, you can see that as a sign of quality. It looks like there's a box within a box. Let me see what's going on here. Looks like they're just kindly asking folks to save the box in case you got to send it back or get it repaired. But, I was planning on saving my box too, just in case, but it's actually a really big box, so let's see. Obviously, I want to see how this thing works. Looks like we got an owner's manual here, which is nice. And this thing is very dense. Wow, it's heavy. Wow. Okay. See, it looks very thick, very high gauge power cable, and it looks like a 12-volt trigger cable, which I'm glad they include that. I didn't have one of those. Here. There we go. Wow, this thing is dense. It kind of reminds me of my Macintosh amp, but my Macintosh is heavier, actually. And it's only 2 channels, too. It's like 90 pounds for 2 channels. but this thing is insanely dense. It's like 60 pounds. You know, it's not even like a tall chassis. It's like 6-inch chassis, and it still weighs more than my Emotiva amps. That's crazy. So let's talk about the aesthetics. As any this is like, it's got a no nonsense industrial look, simple with just a power button, and just it looks like a monoblock. Just the Outlaw logo and model 7000X. Very simple, not overly flashy, and again, this is just a power amp, so I think it's doing exactly what it needs to do. I can respect that. I think I can dig it. I like the compact. I like how compact it is. It's not big for big sake. It looks like, if you look at the amplifier heights, it looks like there's about a couple of millimeters from, so they're using all the space. They could have probably, increased the height of the chassis by maybe an inch to get it up to that almost 8-inch chassis, but they're being very efficient. It's a very dense design. It looks like the components are reaching all the way to the top of the chassis. So, if you have limited space in your rack, this is not going to take up a lot of space. And also, you want to keep a little bit of ventilation. So whatever you might be, if you're tight on space, that extra inch that it could be taking up with chassis could be made up with just a little more ventilation space. It's always good to get some fans anyway when you have high power amps, but overall, I think it looks great. I can dig. It has like that brushed look in the front, which is kind of cool. I like this kind of stuff. Simple, no nonsense kind of design. I think it's really cool. So let's get a good look at the back of this very, very powerful amp. As you can see, you got your binding posts here, and you have your option for RCA inputs, or unbalanced and balanced, and you can toggle. Looks like there's a switch to go from RCA to XLR. In my case, I'm going to be using RCA in my setup, but again, it's as simple as hitting a switch. Obviously, you have 7 channels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Again, each channel has their own XLR, each has RCA, which goes without saying. And there's your remote trigger input, and they do include the cable, which is nice. And there's also a toggle for, you can set it for trigger on or manual on, which I am assuming it means you turn it on using the button itself on the front of the amp. I'm going to leave it a trigger because I'm going to have my receiver turn it on for me without having it manually turn it on every time, which can probably be a little annoying. But again, you can set it to trigger. So you have a chassis ground, and this is a feature that they added in order to, if for some reason you experience if you experience like a ground loop or hum when you connect this thing, particularly what I hear, it's more prevalent with RCA inputs. Again, I haven't tested it, so I can't tell you whether it happened to me or it did not. You can use a piece of wire to run this to your receiver or to your processor or preamplifier, and supposedly eliminates any noise caused by a ground loop. From what I hear, if you use balanced XLR inputs, it's a non-issue. But again, I'm going to test it, and like I said, I will be using RCAs because my receiver that I have in my room, which I'll show you where I'm going to install it in a second, does not have XLRs. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and show you where I'm going to install this thing. It's just going to go over here. And this is sort of like my listening room, you could say my, hi-fi, like vintage. This is where I have my Macintosh vintage stereo from the 1970s. My dad actually gave it to me. It's been in the family for going on 50 years. And this is it's kind of like, it's like, I don't have an old vintage car, but this is the closest thing. You know, this is like sort of like something you just don't let go of. And hopefully one day I'll get my like brand new Macintosh equipment, but for now, this sounds really good. I have an Onkyo receiver that has pre-outs for all channels. It's the RZ830. And I'm just gonna have to reconfigure this a little bit. I'm probably gonna order another shelf to be put in here so I can move the CD player over here. But for now, and I have to actually move, I'm actually gonna, since this amp, even though these shelves are rated for 75 pounds, I'm actually gonna I'm gonna put the amp on the bottom shelf just to be sure, because it's, you know, it's within the weight limits of this thing, but it's a heavy amp. So I'd rather have this, I'm gonna put the receiver on top on the shelf. The receiver weighs still pretty heavy, but it's like 40 pounds. So I'd rather have 40 pounds on one of these shelves than 60. And so yeah, and it also sort of mirror, even though I do like the symmetrical look of here of having all these shelves at the same height. I do like the fact that, you know, I have my preamp on the top and my amp on the bottom. So it sort of be the same configuration with the receiver on top, amp on the bottom. Again, this is an old tuner, which is kind of cool. But yeah, that's going to be the setup. And I have a monolith headphone amp, which I think I'm going to move over there when I do all this. And my trusty Eversolo, still rocking the same spot. But anyway, yeah, that's the plan. So I just got to move some stuff around and try to get it installed. I'm not going to bore you with that, but I'll give you a peek of how I did all the connections, even though there's a lot of cables back here and a lot of people are going to give me flack for it, but I don't care. Oh yeah, I have my SVS 3000 micro in here as well. I didn't have anywhere else to put it, so it's in here now. And ever since I fixed my towers here, my Triton 2s, I stopped running I stopped using the LFE inputs in them and just using them as like full like towers, which is fine. You know, I got the 3000 micro gives me enough power bass for this room, which isn't small but isn't huge. I think it's about 15 feet deep and it's actually 19 feet deep, 19 or 20 feet deep, and I think I'm gonna say like 14 feet wide. So this is a decent sized room. I got all my vinyl in here as well. Some of my CDs, kids mess around with the CDs, that's why I look a little messy. But yeah, you know, that's the plan. And I'll report when I get a little closer to having everything set up. Oh, another reason for why I wanted to put the amp in here is because I have like towers that surrounds. You know, these are probably, you know, seems like even though these are relatively efficient towers, I think they're like 90 dB or 90, maybe 90. I know these are pretty efficient since they have built-in subs, but it's gonna be a nice room to test it in, and I have 5 bedded layers and 2 Atmos ceiling speakers there. So every single channel that's connected will be powered by the amplifier, which is another reason why I want to try it out in here. All right, so this is pretty much as good as cable management gets for me. And yeah, it's a lot of cables, but I do have a lot of stuff running into this rack. So as you can see, I'm running 18-inch RCA cables from my receiver. So obviously this is a receiver, so it doesn't have XLR. Most receivers don't have XLR. And I'm running them down to the amplifier. As you can see, and I have all the little toggles selected to RCA and not XLR, obviously. And as you can see, I got the shortest cables that I could find. I couldn't find 1-footers that I liked. And these are Monoprice ones, and I kind of like always try to go with Monoprice. They make pretty good stuff. And yeah, so that's how it looks back here. Obviously, I'm not using any of the speaker connectors back here. And you know, one day I may or may not look into getting a processor that takes XLR, but I've tested this thing out and it's clean. It sounds fine. Like, I don't hear any hums or anything which people reported in the past. I just noticed some of my banana plugs were really loose, so I just replaced them. And yeah, as you can see, just running the RCA from the top to bottom, and then the speaker plugs plug into the amp itself. Obviously, I'm running my 12-volt trigger up to from right here to my 12-volt trigger in my receiver, and that is turning on the amp, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so I finally finished installing the new Outlaw amp, and it did take a while, but it wasn't the Outlaw's fault. I just had to rearrange a bunch of stuff. I got a second shelf there to put a few more things and to be able to fit the amp. And I think it looks pretty cool. This kind of like this side of the rack is like modern stuff over here, and we got vintage Macintosh like over here and there. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds, and I use them both by using an amp switcher. This switches the front front towers over to a different amp. So amp A would be the Onkyo and the Outlaw, and amp B would be the Macintosh over there. So let me show you how it works. So it's pretty simple. I just plugged it in. I put the 12-volt trigger in, and as you can see, it's glowing. It's going like a light blue. But when I turn on the Onkyo, here I'll show you. I'm going to turn on the Onkyo. It's going to brighten up. It's going to grow. It glows a little bluer, and it's that simple. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I think I'm pretty happy with how this came out. I have more than enough power to power everything in here. And I gotta admit, I was listening to some music yesterday and it sounded pretty sweet, but I'll get into my final thoughts a little later in the video. For any of you who have seen past videos about Outlaw and their amps, there's one particular video, I'm not gonna mention it specifically, but they noted a lot of hum coming through the speaker. So right now I have it set to reference right now. I just ran an EQ and have it set to reference. I actually have it above reference. So if you're gonna hear hum, you would hear it at this volume level. There's no hum. So it could be that I am running the amp. I'm actually running the receiver and the amp through my Monster Power, power conditioner. I'm also running my Macintosh amp through it as well. So it could be that, you have to be wary about your power quality. You have to, if you can, you got to condition your power. But I have noted absolutely no hum. I just want to report that, and I have the volume super loud, and there is absolutely no hum. So yeah, that is my thought. Just if any of you were concerned that the amp is noisy, I think they've done a lot of things to update the amp over the years and added some more features to to address these things that have come out in the past. But yeah, again, no hum from my setup. Again, I want to thank the folks at Outlaw for sending me this amplifier. It's a fantastic product. Not only does it give you like RCA but XLR inputs just like my my Emotiva XPAs. I love that they use a very similar toggle switch to toggle between XLR and RCA. Again, similar to my Emotivas. I think it's a good system, and it's just it's very clear. You have the toggle one way or the other. Whether you're in XLA and RCA. I connected the 7000X with using RCA to my Onkyo receiver in my listening room, in my music listening room, you could say. I experienced absolutely no hum. I think it was incredibly quiet. The amplifier just handled everything with no issues whatsoever. I have never heard that Onkyo sound so good. I can very easily recommend this amplifier, especially if you're kind of cross-shopping between an Emotiva Bass X. If you want to get a little extra power but not get up to XPA levels of cost, I think this is a very solid option, because it's obviously, yes, it's a little more expensive, than the Emotiva 7-channel, the equivalent 7-channel. I think it's $750. This is $1,000, but you are getting you're getting 130 watts all channel driven versus 90. You know, you're also getting the flexibility of XLR as well as RCA. The Emotiva only gives you RCA, so there's definitely some benefits to shelling out that extra $250. I think it's well worth it, in my opinion, just to have that extra. Another thing to mention that I think I kind of brought up earlier in the video, the weight of this thing is simply incredible. I think it actually weighs more than my Emotiva X7 channel XPA, which I think is like 50 pounds. This is 60 pounds. You know, it just feels solid. It doesn't have a lot of style. It's the front of it is very simple, very like industrial, you know, design, but it is incredibly well built. It is very dense. You can see that if you look into the chassis, like every little square, every cubic inch of space is being used up by something, and you can very clearly see that they've really packed this thing tight. And you know, I was very impressed when I first picked it up. I was like, damn, I had to really brace myself to pick up the thing. So definitely another good reason. I honestly think that, you know, this Outlaw amp is absolutely worth its price, just given the build quality, all the features that you're getting, and all the extra power that you're getting compared to some of the other competitors. But yeah, without a doubt, I can easily recommend this amplifier. But anyway, if you have any questions about this amp, feel free to leave them in the comments. It would really help if you can like and subscribe. Really trying to reach that 10,000 subscriber mark. Then yeah, I'll see you in the next one.